I am Alana from Chicken House Press, and this is Writer's Chat.
So I talked to Don, and he just reiterated that he's very happy for me to be the face because he doesn't want to do any interviews at all because he's still working in the field. We've had a couple of conversations about the second book. It's gelling in my head differently, and I'm kind of happy the way that it's gelling. I wouldn't have thought of these things, and I would have missed them. And I think it's better the way it's progressing in my head.
Yeah.
So
Good.
yeah,
That's exciting.
I know.
Yeah. Like why force something, right? Like let it grow on its own and let those seeds germinate and
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, okay, I've got to start.
You're feeling that urgency or that
Well, I'm feeling like, I've got to start, I've got to get it now on paper, and then I can go back and
sure.
fiddle around with it. There was a lot of stuff stacking one on top of the other for me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like next week everything's going to be like cleared. And then I can kind of just, play tennis these 2 mornings a week and then write the others and get, more back into sort of my writing.
That rhythm.
Yeah, that's right. Right. But also, like, I don't talk to a lot of people when I write, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of know that. So I'll get, we'll get back to that soon.
Do you try and write every day, or are there certain days a week that you're going to give to writing, or is it just
When
random?
I start a book, I work on it every day.
You're dug right in.
I'm dug right in. Sometimes it's 14 to 16 hours, and I only get up because I really have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I live in the book.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I can go and play tennis and that's good for me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I'm in the book. And even when, like, I can take 2 hours and play tennis, but even if I'm on my bike, I'm like, oh yeah, that didn't work. Oh, I don't like that. I got to rewrite that.
Always
And
in your head.
yeah, it's almost in my head.
Yeah. Like when you go to bed at night, are you thinking through plot?
Oh my God. I would get up and come to my office and make notes, and I'd have to find my glasses, and it was a big thing. And so I thought I should just have a pad and paper beside my bed, but then I couldn't find the pen. And Mitchell said, oh, for heaven's sakes, just use the record button on your phone. And I thought, why didn't I think of that years ago?
Right.
So now I just wake up and I kind of find the phone and I find the button and I record it. And in the morning, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a great idea. But if I didn't do that,
It'd be gone.
It'd be gone.
Have there been any that have been super weird and like really kooky that in the middle of the night, in the morning, and you're like,
Always.
I don't know what this is?
Always. It's 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't know why it has to be that hour, but it's always been 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning where I wake up and I'm like, oh crap. Sometimes I'll actually get up and work.
Yeah. Wow.
I couldn't do that when I was working full time all the time, but now I can. So sometimes I get up and I work till 11, then I go for a nap.
I love that. Yeah. It's such an interesting schedule, and
it's
intense.
There's no schedule. That's the thing.
Right. It's just the story leads you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the characters kind of become like they're talking to me all the time. And no, we don't want to do that. And I don't like this. And it's, I mean, sometimes I remember reading something, I can't remember where an author was talking about that. And I thought, oh, thank God.
I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy. Right. Yeah. Because it really becomes like that. I am dialoguing with the characters, and I know I can only go so far, and I can only plan so far. And then honestly, the structure of the story is there, but kind of a direction that it'll go, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know how this character is going to respond in that situation. It's a very, very interesting process. It's kind of exciting, but it's kind of like painting with watercolors. You don't really have any idea what they're going to do.
They have a mind of their own, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let them
So,
take the lead.
yeah. And if you try to push it and put them into a place because you're very programmed in how it's supposed to be, it's just not as good.
Doesn't read as believable.
It doesn't read as believable.
Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't read as believable. Those characters have to come to life.
Mhm.
And I remember reading something Stephen King wrote in his memoir for writing. I have it actually, it's on my desk because I refer to it actually quite often.
Yeah.
And he talks about it in there. He said, if you think you can write the end of a character or how you can conceive of that and they're not talking back to you, then you don't really know who that character is.
Right. You're doing them a disservice.
Yeah. And I kind of thought, really?
Right.
And then it happened to me and I was kind of shocked. I was like, wow, okay.
Because it does sound kooky, right? If you're outside, if you haven't experienced actually writing a novel or a short story even,
Oh yeah.
yeah, like it can happen in any of those venues. But if you haven't experienced that, hearing an author say, well, my characters are alive and they're my family and they're with me every day and I'm talking to them, that sounds crazy.
I know. I know. And it's one thing when you write by yourself.
Yes.
Because then, you're kind of in that headspace and in that world and, it's okay. Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're just with yourself.
Right.
Collaborate with somebody as closely as we had to collaborate to write this kind of book.
Yes.
Like this book requires, it's very integrated how we work together. I have to say to Dawn a few times, I'm going to put this together, but just know that we don't have to decide what comes next. It will be given to us. And when I first said that, he looked at me and said, what are you talking about? Because Dawn is very pragmatic and practical, right? Like we are so opposite as people. So he wasn't really, I don't think he understood at all what I was talking about. Yeah. But then it happened to him. As we were talking together, he said, yeah, I don't think that fits. The character's not going to like that. And I just smiled and looked to him and he went, oh, I get it now. Then he kind of got into that groove and he'd be like, okay, well, you let me know, we'll sit down. So I'd write a portion and then we'd sit down and he'd read it and we'd work together and we'd reconstruct it. It was, it's a very, very interesting process working with him. I really like it. It's great.
And so he provided a lot of the real details, right? Like,
oh, absolutely. Like all the characters, all the who they are, their names, the story itself, like the kind of the central story was all his, but it didn't work as a novel. So then we would sit and brainstorm and I would say, yeah, that actually isn't going to work. We're going to have to do something like this or something like this. And I'd say to him, can you think of an event that would fit this? And he'd say, well, what do you need? And I'd say, it has to be like this, because we're at the point where we have to have something happen here. Right. Yeah. So, and then of course there were 3 other consultants that I would send something to and say, okay, make sure that I'm talking about this gun properly. Right. Are we holding it properly? Is he holding it? Because I have to go to a shooting range at some point. Yeah. And this weapons expert wants to take me there because he would keep saying, you got to watch more CSI, Marina. You got to watch. Yeah. And it wasn't my thing at all, right? Yeah. So it was stepping into this world of, guts and glory kind of thing, right?
What inspired that first step? Like, why did you go there?
That's a really interesting question. It would definitely not have been something I would have done on my own. But I know a couple of people that Don knew, which is how I got connected to him. And he was just so passionate about what he does and what, how these stories, he just felt they needed to be told. And so I said, well, send it to me. Let me have a look. And I just knew that there was no way he'd be able to put it together in a form that could be really, so the story would come to life, right?
He's not
And
a
he knew,
writer.
and he knew that too. He's
Yeah.
not a writer.
Yeah.
So he said to me, because he knew that I had these other books and they had read them.
Yeah.
And so he asked me if I would do it with him. I don't know. There was just, I really have come to really love him too, right? He's just such an authentic, real person, and he's so committed to what he does. And I've learned, I mean, it's almost like stepping through a doorway into a world that we live in, but we're completely unaware.
It's all going on behind us.
I was kind of a little gobsmacked by it all to start with, actually.
Yeah. Did it
like
scare you?
how bad it is. Yeah. How
Yeah.
bad it is,
Yeah.
how difficult it is, how these people are putting their lives on the line all the time. And we're going along not really appreciating it or understanding what's going on. So that was pretty big for me. And then as we started to work, I wasn't sure if the collaboration was going to be able to really be fruitful.
Yeah.
But he was fantastic.
Good.
So yeah, it's definitely, it's changed me, actually, because I read 30 to 35 crime fiction books before I started writing to see what the patterns were, what the style was, how different it was from how I normally would write. It is quite different. And so I created this completely different writing style to suit the genre. It just all works.
Yeah.
So the next one is going to be the same kind of guts and glory. And everybody's all ready to go.
Yeah.
And they're great because I'll send a quick email and say, oh, I don't know, like questions like, I can't ever imagine. I'm a very peaceful person, right? So I'm very anti-military. So that's the other thing that's kind of interesting about this. Wow. So this question that I had to ask, I remember asking it thinking, oh my gosh. And the question was, what does that bullet actually do when it enters the body? And then the next question was, that's not enough damage. Give me another bullet.
Yeah. Change the weapon.
Yeah. Once I started asking questions like that, I realized that I'd stepped through the looking glass. Yeah. And the next one will be it's going to be the same characters. We're going to get to know them more. There's going to be more flesh on the bones kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. This on the edge is going to prime people, right? It's going to
that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, toss you right into the action, get you all caught up in the excitement.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get to know them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're still going to be involved. And the next one is going to be, very, very different story, but still, I think more pull on your heart and your gut more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exciting. I can't wait.
Yeah. And it's got the third one is ready to go, but I'm like, don't talk to me about that right now. Just let's do it time. That's too much. Yeah.
But that's so great because really, with a partner like Dawn, I'm sure you have almost endless potential for story, right? Like his experience, his years in service are going to feed you probably as long as you're willing to be.
Absolutely. We could write quite a few of these. It's the thing becomes focusing so that it's not so splintered everywhere. No, this is what we're talking about. This is our story here. We've got to stay on this. Yeah. No, we can't go over here. No, we can't go over here. Got it right. That's the challenge for him. But he's great when I'll say to him, I need this kind of scene. I need something here. And he'll send me 2 or 3 options. And then he'll kind of put notes together and I'll read through those notes and then I rework it in and then he reads it again. He's actually really, he's a very perceptive reader. Like he'll find things in there that I hadn't seen. Like his enthusiasm is fantastically contagious, right? So it's
the perfect partnership, it sounds like.
I mean, I've always been a collaborator, but when you're an artist, it's an insular kind of experience. Like I still have to sit here for hours and hours and hours
Yes.
and put it together, right? But when I did the Remember series, that was 6 books with another person that, again, very different from myself. And we became a really phenomenal team as well. And so, you know, it's really about appreciating and being able to really listen to who that other person is and what they bring that you don't bring. So it doesn't become a competition.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mistake that people make when they work with others, that it becomes a competition. And, you know, and sure, we've had like headbanging moments where I'm like, no, 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 I'm not giving on this one. Right. And he'll be like that too. Or, you know, Marion would be like that too, but it's a healthy kind of interaction.
Right.
But it can get pretty intense sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But that's good. It can't all be, you know, fluffy. That's not real.
That's not real. And your story wouldn't be real as a result of it, right? Like
Exactly.
you wouldn't really get to the guts of what you need to be doing if you weren't willing to give and take and stand up for what you believe in and
right.
listen.
But being able to say, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, yeah, let me think about that. Let me think about how I can work that into how I think to change my vision. That becomes, you know, that's exciting. It's continually moving you out of your comfort zone. And a lot of people aren't prepared to do that because it's not comfortable. And you're like I'm reinventing myself.
Yeah, it's a real growth opportunity.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey and a really, really interesting one. Somebody asked me the other day, is it easier writing this style? Because really, I was a realistic fiction writer. And so there is definitely that in this, but this, of course, is a completely, this is a very specific genre, right? Details have to be incredibly accurate here. Everything is researched. And sometimes we have 3 people researching the same point, right, to make sure to see if we all come up with the same answer. And so it's very meticulous work, and that's really different, right? That's really different.
Your responsibility is different with this genre.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. It's not as philosophical. It's not as, you know, exploratory and let's see what happens with these characters. It's a different kind of challenge for sure.
Then to make that come across as if it's not just a report or an information dump, or to be able to present it in a way that reading it feels like a movie, like watching a movie. So to be able to do that is powerful. Like that's an incredible gift, and people don't recognize how much work that takes and intention, and they just read a great story. They don't think about all that stuff unless things are wrong, then it pulls them right out. So that's a hard recipe to get right.
It is. And that's really nice the way you said that, though, because it's true that you have to be able to create that feeling that you're in a movie. And so that's where the way that I write becomes very powerful, because it still becomes part of the book. It's still me writing it. It's just me with this other layer that I didn't know about before. It's really interesting. So when they said to me, do you like writing this style better? Do you like writing the other style better? I guess the answer is I feel like I'm blending as much as I can. It's definitely not like reading Is Lonely in Paradise or Primrose Street, for sure. And I don't even know if when you read one and you read the other, I guess part of me kind of hopes you wouldn't notice that it's the same author. I feel that the Cole Buckman books are that different.
They're going to stand alone.
And that's cool. I like that. I like being kind of a, you know, not somebody that's just stuck in one, that I've been able to explore both. I mean, I do that in my visual art as well. I don't just paint one thing all the time. I explore different mediums. I explore being able to create different things. And I guess I try to do that in my writing as well. So yeah, it's kind of, it's cool.
Yeah. Have you always been curious? Like
Oh,
always trying other things
oh
and
my gosh. I
reaping
don't have enough
beyond?
time in the day or in my life to do everything that I want to be doing. I mean, I started in the sciences. I
Really?
started in pre-vet. That's what I was going to do.
Oh.
And then I went off and became an opera singer. And then I went and back to school and became a journalist. And I mean,
Oh my
oh, I know.
goodness. Wow, that's amazing.
I know.
So who knows where you're gonna go?
So I love it all, and I love the arts. I mean, I guess the one thing that's always been there for me has been the arts. And somebody did say to me once, because I was always writing,
Mhm.
always had stories, always writing. And to
Yeah.
get out of doing chores, I'd take a little basket of books and climb up into this tree in our back.
Oh,
Nobody could find me, and I would sit up there, and they'd be hollering for me, and I would just ignore them. I'd sit up there reading my books, and
I love that.
yeah, so books and writing and art really has
Oh,
always been important. And I kind of feel in some ways that I've come to be doing now what I really love. I
mhm.
mean, it's so
You're
that's
kind of always heading in this direction somehow.
yeah, I think so. And I could wish that I'd started it earlier, which I did, but
Mhm.
it things happen when they happen, right? And
Sure. Yep.
so
Yep.
yeah,
You just go with
but
it.
very curious, always excited about learning new things and exploring new things. And I take information in very quickly and process it very quickly. So yeah.
Was there art in your home? Were your parents creative?
They were both musicians.
Mhm.
Like they didn't do that for their job, but they were both extremely good musicians. And my grandfather was very artistic. He was an opera singer and an artist as well. He
Mhm.
did some gorgeous, gorgeous paintings when he got older. He started
Okay.
painting. On my dad's side, I think there's been a lot more, there's been music everywhere, and everybody has been very literary. I mean, books have always been, they were always everywhere. So
So you've just been saturated like from birth.
yeah, pretty much. Like it's
Yeah.
just always, but I think it was definitely more in me because
Mhm.
my siblings they don't have a fingernail of artistic ability. And yeah. Um, but I remember trooping off into the forest when I was pretty little, like 7 or 8, and I would have this whole world there that
Mhm.
I created, like all the little fairies and the gnomes, and I
Yeah.
would talk to them in the trees, and like I had this whole little world that I would go to in the forest and be there with them. So I was more in my imagination
Mhm.
always than I
Mhm.
was where I was supposed to be.
I like that. Did you have a favorite book or book series as a child?
Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I don't know if you can see them up here, but I have all the original yellow
Oh,
hardcover.
do you?
And I started my own series, Tammy the Detective, when I was, I guess, 10.
Yeah.
I still have it, but I don't.
Mhm.
And it's kind of interesting that I'm writing this crime fiction. I just thought of that
Full
here
circle.
that I'm actually finally writing my detective story. I
Oh,
never
that's
thought of that.
amazing.
It's
Wow.
funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
So Cole Buckman, where did the inspiration for that character? Like he's kind of the leading man of what's going to be this whole series. So do you know where he came from?
There were 3 or 4 people that Don worked with that he really respected, not just in the field of security and Secret Service and all that kind of thing, but also in golf, because Don started out as a golfer.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why Cole's cover is that he's a golf pro,
Yeah. Which I was going
right?
to ask you about. So that's good. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And so Don is a great golfer, and he
Mhm.
started out as that. And then he, went into this other direction, which, was the good direction for him. He loves it and he's really, really good at it. But
Yeah.
so Cole was a combination of professional people he met in both worlds. We talked about what age he was going to be. I think we've made him the late 30s.
Mhm.
We didn't want him over in the 40s, and we didn't want him younger than 35. And he was MI6, so he has a very high degree of
Mhm.
skill. So I think Don came with that name right away.
Really?
Absolutely adamant. And so I liked it right away. I said, I think it's a strong name. I think it's a good name.
Yeah.
And then when he was creating, I don't want to give too much away of the book, but it wasn't enough to just have Cole. He didn't want, I think what it was is that he wanted to honor people. He wanted to honor people that had done great work, but not using their names and all that. He wanted to honor people. He wanted to honor stories. He wanted to honor, and the second book is very, very much that. It's a heart, it pulls on the heartstrings, this next one. Yeah, I'm going to be having to have a box of Kleenex while I'm writing. Yeah, and I think that, so I'll come back to that in a minute. But the fact that people were brought out of retirement to work with Cole to help him with what happened with his dad is really, again, there's all of these characters are people that Dawn knew, one or more that have been blended to create these characters, right?
That's a really special nod.
It's very special. Some of them are not around anymore. And so it's a real tribute, but people that they know are still around.
Right.
So if they read the book, or when they read the book, they will know. They will.
There's enough identifying.
There is.
Little Easter eggs in there.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. They'll know. But I kind of liked having the young and the older. Like I liked having the Jack Reacher and Red. So, and that's what Cole Buckman is. He's pulled in, they are so much happier to be working. So they all keep doing it together. And I like the team element. And that's what made Cole different, that he's not completely isolated on his own.
Yeah.
He works with a team. And I like that, because usually they're just focusing on one person that's a bit of a loner. The two big ones, like Jack Reacher and Jason Bourne, very isolated. They don't really have any connections anywhere. And there is a lot of connections in the Cole Buckman book, a lot of connections.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I think that's powerful. And I think it also shows that in that world, it doesn't have to be isolated.
Right.
Right. Like, yes, some of them sacrificed having families for the job they were doing, for sure. But, you know, in the next book, we're going to show how they're still human too. And how do we pull that together? And that puts the books into a slightly different area, because there's almost more humanity in it when you start dealing with connections between people, right?
Oh, of course.
They become a family.
That's a family. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's danger in that, right? There's danger in that.
Yeah, of course.
It's a very interesting collection of people. And I know four of the actual people that are sort of used to create the characters. So that it's very interesting. It's a very interesting journey for sure.
Wild.
Oh, it was wild. It was wild for me. I'm not sure. It was wild for me in a different way, just because I was walking into this very aggressive world.
Right. Yeah.
And there are a few people that have said, oh, I never read that kind of book, but I might pick up yours. I might pick up that one. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so who knows, maybe that'll open the door to people sort of expanding their genres.
Right.
You know, there is still the gruesome part, but like, I can't watch horror films. There's not an element of, I don't know, they just don't work for me at all. I don't get them. But I have started watching a lot more detective shows and shows I probably wouldn't have watched before. What's particularly different for me is that before I would turn it off if it got too violent. And now I watch it and I take notes.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, yeah, that wasn't enough. They shouldn't have stopped there.
Yeah, push it a little harder. Yeah.
Yeah, or that was too gratuitous. I don't feel like that was real. Or so I watch them really differently. But I find that it's definitely a little bit of a dark side that we all kind of dance with.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I like that these books kind of explore that.
Mhm.
And how does that good and evil come
Right.
to be? And
Yeah.
I think Dawn really talks about that, having a family of first responders.
Mhm.
You hear some stories, and they're definitely dancing with the devil a lot.
Oh, for sure. And the trust they would have to have for their team and the
Oh,
loyalty of that team.
yeah, and even if they're working on their own, yeah, it's a world for sure. And so when I'm watching, like if I'm watching a movie that's dealing with the Marines or SWAT teams or that kind of thing,
Mhm.
I have a different feeling about the characters in there too now.
Yeah, you have a different perspective.
Yeah, very much. So
You're on the inside now.
well, I'm more on the inside than I was before, that's for sure. Firing weapons, it sort of brings out this, it's not aggression, it's like a power.
Mhm.
But then how do you navigate when you've unleashed that power? How do you navigate using that in a world that we're trying to create less aggression in?
Mhm.
There's a lot of big questions like that, right?
Right. And it creates a real tension right within the book.
And the
It's
first
really
book
interesting.
is very much looking at that good and evil, the desire for power, and for what? Like,
Right.
what is that power about? And how is social media and our world how has that connection become almost perverted?
Right.
And
That's a
how
big question.
it's huge. And so I'm kind of hoping that it will make people think a little bit about what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Is it real? Is it really what you're looking at?
Mhm.
Or where has it come from?
Right.
There's a lot of questions that are being raised in this book for sure. There
Mhm.
will be a lot of questions raised in the next one. But I think that's the other thing that this is about. It's about the crime fiction. It's about the detective work. It's about the guts and glory, but it's also about humanity and what we're struggling with, and bringing some things forward and looking at that.
There's real depth there.
Thank you.
Hopefully it sparks some good conversation. Like I'd love to
Yeah.
see you invited into book clubs and stuff to have those conversations with readers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, it really does. I would really love it to be in lots of book clubs. And honestly, I mean, I'm sure it would work for all of them, but this particular one, On the Edge, I mean, when I'm finished writing the next one, I'd love to write a screenplay for this, because this really would translate beautifully onto the screen. It's a
Oh yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really exciting, fast moving, around the world kind of story.
How was it writing the around the world parts?
Well, I mean, it helps that I've traveled a lot.
Okay. You've
Yeah, I've
been
been in
off
all those
all of them.
countries.
Okay.
Yeah. I think to write it without having traveled would definitely be different, because you
Yeah.
don't have the sense of time and different culture and
Right.
airports and all that kind of thing, right? I called on, like, especially in one of the scenes in France, was definitely a memory of mine of a place that I was in. So I think that helped a lot. As a movie, I mean, it goes from country to country. It would be, very exciting. It'd be very
Well,
exciting.
visually it would just be amazing.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Tricky doing that,
Sure.
going back and forth and keeping all those facts together. I mean, that's a definite trick, but I did have to kind of juggle a lot of that in not quite the same way, but trying to remember where everybody was in Primrose Street. It's not like it was new to me trying to juggle all of that, but it was definitely a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of moving pieces.
It's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah. You had some real nods to Toronto,
Yeah.
and like identified streets and
Right.
locations, and which I loved because I've been to Toronto, obviously.
Right.
So I think little things like that are really fun for the reader. If a reader's been to France and they recognize some of the things that you talk about, like those are really neat connection points that,
And they're all real places.
yeah.
And they're all real restaurants, and they're all like, those were not made up. Those were all real things. That was important too.
Yeah. Well, because you want the story to read as real,
Right.
and pieces of it are real. We're not
Right.
going to know which ones are actually inspired by actual events. But yeah, that just adds to that authenticity and just makes it so much easier to digest, right? Because we believe it. We're like, oh, I've been there.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point you made. I'm just gonna make sure I don't miss that for the next one. So I wanted to make a little note, like, I have notes all over my house, by the way.
Yeah.
If I don't write it down, I'm not gonna remember it in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I've got too much in my brain. So so yeah, there's little pieces of paper all over the place or stuck on the wall, or yeah.
How do you amalgamate all that?
Yeah, that's the trick. So
Right.
when I'm in the moment, when I'm actually writing it, I'll go through all of them and I'll know the ones that I'm going to pull in. Like, I need that here. I need that here. Oh, that was a great idea. And some of them I don't use, but I leave them there because I might use them next time.
Never know.
And the next one, I think social media, I mean, we set these in like 2015.
Mhm.
They're all going to be in that kind of zone.
Sure.
Because it's far enough back that things weren't quite as technological as they are now, but still they were technological. We still had all of the internet and phones and cell phones, and all of that happening, just not quite as advanced yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the interconnection between different countries, it is very real. And I don't think there's a way to write a book like this, even the next one or the next one, without, they're all going to be moving in different countries.
Right.
They have to.
The world is so small now.
The world is so small now. Yeah. So, and just with, having an MI6 agent, hasn't sat in the same place for his life doing his work. So even flashbacks or all of those things take us into all different places. Yeah.
No shortage of material.
No shortage of material. Right. But like we were saying at the beginning, it's about being able to be discerning.
Yes.
And be able to say, yeah, no, that's not what we're doing. Mm-hmm. That's over here. We have to stay here, or it's too much.
Yeah.
We have to keep our focus on where we're going.
Good. So important.
Yeah.
Do you have plans coming together for some kind of a launch party when On the Edge is ready?
We have a bookstore that is very excited about it. And so the launch will be there. And it's so great that we can do that now and come back into our world with real people. And yay, I'm very excited about that. So that will be probably in September. We're going to try to have it filmed so that it can be posted as well for people who couldn't come. So that'll be enjoyable, and Dawn will be there too. So
very exciting. Well, I can't wait to get it all finalized and get it out there. And
I know I'm very excited to get that out there and start getting more promotion going, and so people know that there is a new crime fiction series that's worth looking at. That Louise Penny is not going to be writing anymore, and Lee Child is he's not writing so much anymore either. So, hey, you've got something to fill that gap, and it's right up there.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I love that.
Reed Hawkins going forward. Reed Hawkins for crime fiction. There we go.
Is there anything else that you want to add before we kind of wrap it up? I
love the cover. I think it has an explosive and yet mysterious quality to it. I love that. I love that it's kind of dark. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that the cover of the book speaks volumes to the book. Thanks to Mitchell for putting that together. He's got a beautiful vision for creativity. So I'm really glad that he's actually helped me with looking visually at every book cover that I've done. He's got quite a talent for that.
What is it like for you to have a son kind of following in your writing footsteps?
It's really fabulous. I mean, we're very similar, and we can have conversations together about art and literature like we cannot have with anybody else.
Right.
And so it's a comfort to be able, like, he will call me or say to me, what do you think of this? I'm going to send you this. Can you have a read? What do you think? And he knows that I'm always going to be honest and say, yeah, I don't like it, or try this. And I can do the same for him. So visually, I will always send him when I'm working on a piece of visual art, and he will be, no, I need a little more here. So we're very critical, but we're very supportive. And it's almost like a language, a language of the heart that you speak. And it's really kind of comforting to know that there is somebody that really gets it. So I really value his input and just being able to work together. And I think that he feels like that for my input as well. So it's really special. I'm really appreciative of that.
I think that's a rare kind of connection.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I'm super, super proud of him, because I know how much it takes to put together pieces of art. And it's a piece of yourself, not like another job. It's a piece of yourself, and being able to let it become that disembodied art is, it takes time to learn to do that. I have a little more experience. He comes with a different view of things. And so it's very special.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for agreeing to do this with me.
Absolutely.
I think you're just a wealth of juicy, like glimpses of the writer's life. I think it's so great.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
Hopefully it inspires someone to pick up the pen, pick up the book.
Yeah, pick up the book first.
Sure.
Pick up the book first. Yeah. The one thing I say to people though is, like, I sit on a ball chair now to write.
Yeah.
Because I can sit on that for 8 to 10 hours without my back hurting. I can't sit on a chair. And I've had to figure out ways to be, and I'll have big thermoses of tea and 4 or 5 bottles of water, because I know I'm not leaving this space once I get done. Right. So
amazing.
I know.
You're kind of intense.
It's true. I am.
Yeah. That's brilliant. That's amazing. Okay. Well, thank you
so much.
So great to chat with you and see you.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. Nice to see you.
You too. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. You look great, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And really excited about what you're doing. And I want this series to work for us, but I want it to work for you too. I'd love it to explode. We just have to get Chicken House Press.
Yeah, to the sky, all the way.
Up and running. Yeah. All right. Take care.
Okay. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You can order your copy of this brand new crime fiction novel by visiting chickenhousepress.ca/bookstore.